Welcome to Pukkar-e-Pakistan. I am Ahmad Malik. Today we'll be addressing a movement that has recently gained popularity in Pakistan, a movement that the mainstream media of Pakistan is really hesitant to talk about, the feminist movement of Pakistan. We'll be having a feminist activist on our show, and we'll ask her questions regarding this very movement. And we'll address, does Pakistan really as a nation need the feminist movement or not? Welcome to Pukkar-e-Pakistan. Today we'll be talking about the feminist movement in Pakistan. Uh, I have with me my guest Mehrunissa. She's a feminist activist and will be sharing her thoughts on the movement. Welcome, Mehrunissa.
Hi, Ahmad.
Okay, so my first question is a very straightforward question regarding the feminist movement. What are the objectives of the feminist movement in Pakistan?
I think the very objectives of feminist movement are pretty basic. Like all feminist movement, as in need, is just women's basic rights to be achieved, right? So, for example, in our country, females are considered as second class citizens because we're living in a patriarchal society, right? So there's a lot of difference between the rights that are provided to women in Pakistan as compared to men. For example, the literacy rate of women is like 45%. And if we go to, like, for example, Balochistan, the literacy rate over there is just like, I guess that's just 25%. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of dropout of women from schools as well, and that's like really problematic as to how women are discriminated and are disadvantaged because of the systematic divide that there is between the genders in Pakistan.
Considering you talking about how there are no rights for women, considering you talked about how they in the coronavirus women have to work on double shift, don't you feel the same burden lies upon men in our society?
I don't think men do have that much responsibility when it comes to domestic work in our society, because understand that we are living in a patriarchal society and there are some gender roles that are related to women and men both, and that leads to women being the sole caretakers of, like, of the patients or their children or their entire family, right? So I don't think men have that much pressure, but as compared to women, obviously, definitely.
Sure, that makes sense. My question, next question revolves around the fact that sure there'll be a reason why you actively took part in the movement, and I really want to know, was there any specific case or any specific area which you felt was necessary to address when coming into this movement?
When I, like, first when I joined, like, feminist movement in itself, I don't remember exactly how long it was, but I felt particularly passionate about it when I went to Earth March 2 years ago, because I realized how many women are facing the same problem. Although I read stats and I spoke at, like, everyone committees and I knew about it, but I experienced them for the very first time and then realized how much these very issues are, like, these very issues are experienced by all of the women. And one particular problem that I saw was, like, patriarchy in itself. I didn't have, like, particular issue towards patriarchy. I mean, the whole nature and the system of our society was very problematic to me. For example, I saw my household workers, like different household workers, we have had, like, changes in them, and the way their daughters who used to study from me got married before they even turned 18, before they even completed their education. Or when my friend told me that her dad doesn't allow her to go out when he allows her brother. I think all of these issues were, like, very seemed very important to me and are very important to me.
Considering you talked about the Aurat March, it's considered as the forefront of the movement, considering it Pakistan. But we've seen a lot of backlash towards this very march, and in some cases, it has actually increased hostility towards women, as the critics argue that it is too Western. What's your take on that?
Firstly, I don't think it's Western. Main argument against this is, I don't think that this idea of equal rights didn't exist. Like, for example, there are numerous like instances where women have fought for gender equality, whether it can be your grandmother who was single and who was a single parent and had raised generations, but it can be also like organizations such as Women's Action Forum who have worked towards equality, who have like fought for women's rights under like traumatic regimes like Zia's regime, with Islamization and everything. I think just because we didn't have, just because feminism is an English word doesn't exactly mean that we have to be contrary to it. I think there are going to be a lot of critics towards it, because understand that again, um, we are living in a patriarchal society. Men are definitely scared that women are speaking up, women are fighting for their rights. I mean, why would they want to give up their crown so easily? So I think there is going to be backlash. There is going to be a lot of critiques about it, but I don't think that this idea of it being Western is a very strong argument from them towards us. And even if we do believe that it's a Western concept of women having equal rights, why is it so bad? Like, I don't think that's such a big problem.
Okay, considering you talked about, you laid the ground that it's not Western, but considering that the Ulamah did get a lot of backlash, particularly in Pakistan, then why involving yourself in marches that actually increase hostility towards women? Uh, doesn't that have an inverse effect on the feminist movement as a whole?
I don't think it like had an inverse effect. I think it strengthened a lot of the bond between women in Pakistan. I mean, not everyone who participated had similar beliefs about feminism. For I mean, obviously, we are different people. We have different beliefs. Some would have like different issues towards feminism, and it's such a broad and beautiful idea that united us and had like a moment for us to just feel empowered and liberated and come together as a community. And I think it did a lot of benefit than harm. I think the organizers of women's march did a lot of campaigns, did a lot of awareness, and I think I know a lot of people who got to know about the issues that women face, like privileged girls, for example, got to know how much the problem of patriarchy is in Pakistan. And I think that empowering women about their rights, enlightening them about it, is very important. And I don't think there is going to be ever no backlash. There's always going to be backlash. I don't think it should stop us. Like, it only empowers more when, I know that there is going to be resistance towards it, but that's never going to stop me.
That makes sense. My question was, next question revolves around the fact that there was this slogan that was very prevalent around the Aurat March, Mera Jism Meri Marzi. One that the critics was again too Western in its essence, and second that it did not fit into the norms of Pakistani society. So, what's your take on the slogan?
You're talking about Mera Jism Meri Mercy, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Firstly, I personally don't think that that very slogan was controversial in itself. But I'll tell you why people found it controversial, and how Orange March organizers and a lot of people told the media uh, of what it exactly meant. But firstly, this entire poster of Mira Jism Meri Merzi nearly meant that women should have equal rights to their bodies as men. For example, women shouldn't be like killed in the name of honor. Women shouldn't like face a lot of women should be provided with the right to choice of having children and not being burdened from men about these very decisions. I think just basic rights about their bodies isn't controversial in itself. But secondly, I think this is only because our like society, our media is male dominated, and that is why they constantly try to misconstrue about what this poster meant. However, we told again and again what this poster meant, but they never understood it. But secondly, I'll tell you, like when I was like in Aurat March, this year's Aurat March, I was like having a lot of fun and I felt very empowered like always. But like, and I also felt very safe first time in a public space in Pakistan because I knew all of the people standing there were fighting for women's rights, right? But when I had a couple of interviews, I was so aggravated because men over there from media were actively trying to ask like these ridiculous questions even which made absolutely no sense, which clearly showed that there's a particular bias. For example, my poster was about um say no to honor killings because अपनी दो टके की इज्जत के लिए दूसरों की जिंदगी ना छीनो. And he was the guy who was asking questions was constantly like, आपके अब्बू तो नहीं करते होंगे ना, आप क्यों बोल रही हैं इसके बारे में? And I told him why I'm doing that. I told him about the stats, but he still didn't listen to it and still constantly attacked his own like rigid toxic norms and values. And the second thing that you said that there are norms and values, I think that these very norms are and values if they exist are very problematic, and that is why we are fighting for them to be erased.
That makes sense. Uh, but considering your cause is noble and it's not controversial in its essence, but let's consider that this slogan was in reality something that the critics used against the movement. So why use such slogans and why not make it clear so that the people do, and the critics do not use it against the movement as a whole?
So I think there were a lot of posters. I personally made a lot of posters about statistics, about facts, about so many things. And I went there and I saw posters about explaining this poster as well. And some people had this poster, but again, I told you that our media is male dominated and it only tried to show one side of the picture. I don't think like if we concede to the very fact, then there's always going to be some things that we have to concede to. I think that's very problematic. They said that make different postures, we did, but did they focus upon it? No. So I think that's their fault, not ours.
That makes sense. We see how some ideas of feminism are affiliated or equated to humiliating men. I mean, it's something that not only the general society feels, but also sometimes argued by feminist activists. So, like, what do you feel that the idea is part of the movement, or it's just used against the very movement?
I don't personally think that we are humiliating men. I think we are doing it. I think we're just degrading their actions that are sexist, that are misogynistic. I think these very actions, when we say that men are trash, we are talking about what their actions are. If you are a woke person and you know about how many rights of women are violated on a very daily basis, then you wouldn't argue about it. If you had an open mind about how much patriarchy exists and how much women are not treated equally, then I don't think you would be so aggravated about being shamed. I think men do know that their fellow about what their fellow men do, and I think it's just a hard time for them to admit their own actions and how they haven't called out for their friends or what they did.
Okay, but I'll argue for because I feel the idea that you initially presented as the feminist movement was that you were arguing against the ideas that men present. Agreed that they aren't very ideal and can be improved, but then using the same way that you are rejecting, considering if a man calls a woman or body shames her, using that same tactic against men, wouldn't that be really beating the purpose of the movement in the first place?
You're trying to say that if we are criticizing them, then they also have a right to criticize us. I didn't understood the question. Could you please rephrase it?
Yeah, my idea is, well, they in the first place are causing problems to women by words, right?
Yeah.
When then using the same idea against them or criticizing them wouldn't that really beat the purpose of the movement?
No, I don't think that really beats the purpose of the movement. I mean, they're the ones causing it, and then if we talk about them and if we do criticize them, then I don't understand how it anyway harms the movement in itself. I think it only embodies the movement together. I think it's important to call out men. I think it's important to call out their problematic actions. And if there's like critiques towards it, and yeah, critiques towards it, then I think that's just that's just how it's going to be. I mean, there's always going to be a voice against it. I think that's just going to empower women to come up when they listen these voices and understand what the very two perspectives are and what is the
Okay.
right one.
Um, you yourself are part of the debating society and the immune circuit. Would you want to share some experiences that you feel exist there regarding this very movement? Some issues that women face in that area?
I think so yeah, there are a lot of issues that exist in the debating circuit. I'm just in the debating circuit, parliamentary debating circuit. I'm new to that, but I've seen and I've talked to a lot of like by people. I've talked to a lot of people in the circuit, and I've realized how many issues exist. I think, and it makes me sad that when people have the privilege to know what's right and wrong when they debate about it, their actions totally go against it, and that's just sad. But like, yeah, there's a lot of sexual harassment prevalent in the society. I think that is a very big issue. I think male debaters constantly badger female debaters. I think that's also a problem. I think there are numerous problems related to that. And for that, Women's Forum just recently started. I don't know if it recently started, but like I've recently been engaged with Women's Forum, and I was also an equity officer over there. So they have developed different equity policies where these sort of instances don't happen, right? And secondly, in the immune circuit, I think people just go and new people come very easily in the circuit. So the problems lies between how these very conferences work, right? Mostly, what the male mothers try to do is try to dominate women by their height, by their voice, and it always works because immigrants in Pakistan rely more on skills for manipulation rather than on diplomacy. And their tactics like these always work in the favor of them because let's face it, why would why would the dais be unbiased or least sexist than those very uh, immune debaters?
Agree to you. I agree to that. Considering the immune circuit is really manipulative towards the idea that they favor upon manipulation and domination rather than actual skills. So I think that's a valid argument there. But before you leave, uh, considering you pointed out a lot of problems within Pakistani society, uh, do you feel there is uh, there is a way that change could be brought about?
Yes, I definitely think that there's a way for change to come about. I think there are several ways. I think as time goes by, and like for example, in the past, it was very the movement in Pakistan was obviously very hard under regimes such as they worked hard, but the contemporary feminism in Pakistan has become more inclusive of like every class, every gender, every religion. It has been more inclusive for transgender and non-binary people. I think those very developments where women are constantly taking up their voice about talking about their bodies more, it wasn't like something they could do in like past 40 years ago, but they can do now. So I think that's a development. I think the very systematic changes are only going to come when we continue fighting for our rights, for changes in laws, for changes like in from the grassroots level, from breaking norms and values. Just speaking up is just going to change a lot.
Are there any specific ways you feel that are necessary to bring about this change in the future?
I think from start, I think that equal education for women is very for girls is very important and very significant in bringing about change, because half of your population isn't provided as equal the equal opportunity to be educated is a lot of problem in bringing equality. But secondly, I think that what we can do is um, just to make the public of Pakistan more aware about what the situation is, so that the very gender norms and the values that are harmful towards both men and women are broken. And when these very norms are broken, then there wouldn't be that much backlash towards the very systematic change that we bring into the laws in the society, or just bring in opportunities, right? Because if we do it without breaking those very norms and values, if we just change the laws, then I mean, Facebook would go crazy, right? So yeah, I think starting from the grassroots is very important. And yeah, simultaneously changes systematically, providing them with equal opportunities and providing more laws, comprehensive laws towards discrimination, and actually providing to to those men is very important.
Okay. Would we be seeing any future steps taken by this movement recently? Because we've seen them in the past, but we've seen how the movement generally is overshadowed, is not media. So does that affect the movement?
I think it definitely does. I think Audit March, after Audit March happens, it does a lot of work. It does a lot of like the organizations unite together to work towards for women empowerment and their benefits. But I think only when Audit March is happening, the mainstream media represents and takes this very issue to light, and just taking it up for just one time of a year isn't going to bring any change, right? So I think, yes, it really really harms the movement when the mainstream media doesn't take the issues of women seriously until and unless it's just a protest a year.
Okay, thank you, Marinissa, for being with us. It's an honor having you.
No problem, thank you so much for having me.